During the 1970s, despite the inviting beaches and lively boardwalks, Southern California had a darker side. It wasn't all fun with roller skates and ice creams. It was a place where terrible things happened. Being a young man in that area during that time was risky. Whether you lived there or were just passing through, almost every other day, lifeless bodies were being discovered. Some had been shot, others strangled. The only common thread among them was their youth and gender. They were all young males. Some were homosexual or bisexual, but a few were heterosexual. Many of them were Marines, which was puzzling because some of the victims bore signs that the killer might have been ex-military. 2 victims had tissue paper residue on their noses, matching a military practice used to prevent the body from expelling fluids after death. Fast forward 15 years, 2 California Highway Patrol officers pulled over a suspected drunk motorist on the San Diego Freeway in Mission Viejo, California, just after 1 a.m. on May 14, 1983. He seemed like a typical DUI suspect who was driving erratically. When the driver stepped out of the car, a Moosehead Lager bottle slipped onto the road and broke. Officer Sterling also saw that the man's jeans were undone. Now, Sterling's partner, Sergeant Howard, focused on the guy in the passenger seat. That person was passed out and partially wrapped in a jacket. Trying to rouse the passenger, when he moved the jacket, the sergeant noticed the man's pants were pulled down, showing private parts. There were marks on his neck, like from choking, and his hands were tied up with a shoelace. Taking a closer look, it became clear that the young man wasn't simply unconscious. He was dead. The 38-year-old driver identified himself as Randy Kraft, who would eventually become recognized by the public with a more familiar name, the Scorecard Killer. The passenger, who had passed away in Kraft's car, was identified as Terry Gambrell. He was a 25-year-old Marine stationed at El Toro Air Base in Orange County. Terry was last seen trying to hitch a ride to a friend's party in Santa Ana. Sadly, he never made it there. He was declared dead at Saddleback Community Hospital less than an hour after he arrived. He had been strangled with his own belt, which officers later found on the backseat of Kraft's Toyota Celica. The question on everyone's mind was, who was the man they had in custody? Local law enforcement officials pondered this as they needed evidence to dig deeper. The victim in the car had signs of torture, similar to other young male bodies discovered across Southern California over the past decade. Was Randy Kraft the person the police had been searching for? Randolph Steven Kraft was born on March 19, 1945, in Long Beach, California. He seemed like a well-rounded and normal kid of his age, perhaps a bit more nerdy and strongly opinionated about politics. At 18, he earned the nickname Crafty Randy for his handsome looks and magnetic charm. He discreetly frequented gay bars. While Kraft occasionally dated girls, his classmates and teachers later mentioned that they had a feeling he might be homosexual. Kraft himself acknowledged that he understood his sexuality was gay during that, but he kept it hidden. In 1964, Kraft enrolled at Claremont College, and around that period, he began his first same-sex relationship. He also took up a bartending job at a gay bar and started having casual sexual encounters with local gay individuals. After finishing college, Kraft enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. He advanced to the rank of Airman First Class and even became a supervisor. However, he chose to reveal his homosexuality to his military superiors, leading to a medical discharge. Around the same time, Randy opened up to his family about his sexual orientation, but his conservative parents didn't react positively. In March 1970, Randy Kraft's history of sexual assault became known when he targeted a 13-year-old boy named Joseph Fancher at the Huntington Beach Pier. Kraft approached Fancher and convinced him to come back to his apartment by offering him a place to stay and the opportunity to have sex with a woman Kraft knew. Fancher was given drugs and then subjected to physical and sexual assault. Fortunately, Fancher managed to escape when Kraft left the apartment to go to work. He was taken to a hospital by ambulance where the police questioned him. Due to a feeling of embarrassment, Fancher did not disclose the full extent of the sexual assault to the police. He also mentioned that he had taken the drugs voluntarily. As a result, the police conducted a brief and ineffective investigation, leading to no charges being filed against Randy Kraft. The reasons behind Randy Kraft's choice to torture and kill people in such a brutal way remain a puzzle. Even though it's been more than 50 years since his first murder, and even with overwhelming and undeniable proof against him, what we do know about Kraft's killing spree are the specifics of the crimes. It all began in the late 1971 and continued somewhat regularly until the middle of 1983, when he was finally arrested for driving under the influence with a deceased Marine in his car. But there was some pattern to how Kraft carried out his actions. Kraft primarily targeted the Southern California region, specifically Orange County, Long Beach, and the South Bay areas, while he also committed murders in Oregon and Michigan. These locations were not intentionally chosen, but rather connected to business trips Kraft had taken nearby. Notably, a significant number of Kraft's victims were Marines, reflecting the presence of numerous military bases and stations in Southern California. Kraft had a preference for young men, with the age range of his victims spanning from 13 to 35 years old. However, the majority of his victims were in their late teens and early 20s. Many of Kraft's victims were hitchhikers who were enticed with alcohol and offered a ride. Most of these victims were drugged with tranquilizers that had been mixed into the alcohol provided by Kraft. The cause of death typically involved bludgeoning, asphyxiation, or strangulation. Kraft's preferred locations for disposing of the bodies were near freeways. Now, there's a significant question that comes up. Was the Scorecard Killer working with someone else? Clues from DNA and other proof indicate that Kraft might not have acted alone in his terrible deeds. By 1975, around 14 victims were seen as part of the work of one serial killer. Detectives were eager to charge Kraft, but the LA District Attorney's Office declined, thinking the victim's death was accidental. Kraft didn't come into the law enforcement's focus again until his DUI arrest in 1983. The discovery of Terry Lee Gambrell's body in Kraft's car triggered a larger investigation. A search of the car turned up photos, bloodstains, drugs, and other items, leading to a search of his home. This search uncovered even more evidence of wrongdoing, including personal belongings of his victims going back over the past 10 years. Right after Gambrell's murder, Kraft was swiftly accused, and by September 1983, investigators had put together the extent of Randy Kraft's offenses based on the overwhelming evidence they had found. However, the most chilling and incriminating discovery was a journal located in the trunk of Kraft's car. This journal contained a secret code consisting of words, numbers, and initials that stood for names, cities, and other information. This list later earned the name the Scorecard. For example, EDM refers to victim Edward Daniel Moore. Skates referenced a 17-year-old who was last seen carrying roller skates near Club Ripples, a Long Beach gay bar. MCHB tattoo referred to a tattooed Marine that Kraft met in Huntington Beach. Authorities managed to match the list with several unresolved murders and link Kraft to 15 cases. Sadly, investigators couldn't identify many items on the list. The trial of Randy Kraft began in September 1988 and extended for 13 months. More than 160 witnesses were called, and over 1,000 pieces of evidence were presented. After deliberating for 11 days, the jury reached their decision on May 12, 1989. Randy Kraft was found guilty of 16 counts of murder, 1 count of sodomy, and 1 count of emasculation. In less than a month, the same jury reconvened and decided that Kraft should receive the death penalty. Many involved in the case, including jurors, law enforcement, and especially victims' families, find it hard to believe that more than 40 years after being sentenced, Kraft hasn't been executed yet. The lengthy delay can be attributed to the slow-moving state and federal appeals process, Kraft's numerous court filings due to his tendency to sue, the vast scale of the case. So, Randy Kraft, the Scorecard Killer, is currently on death row in California's San Quentin State Prison. The murders committed by Randy Kraft were among the most brutal and extensive serial killings in recent history. Presently, Randy Kraft maintains his innocence while still being on death row in San Quentin.